I was a member of the group that created the Dementia Friendly Northern project. Our group identified advocates in the community and collaborated and consulted with them for the needs assessment and also the project development. However, I think that this was more a consultative approach rather than a collaborative one, which takes empowerment away from the community and also will decrease the sustainability of the project in the long term. I think that if I was to be running the project, I would have adopted a more collaborative approach and identified a dementia-friendly Northern committee and then implemented capacity building strategies with the team and educated them around CBR, which has been identified in the CBR guidelines by the World Health Organization to increase empowerment of the community, which would increase the power sharing, take the power away from us and give it to them, increase ownership of the project, self-direction, and proactivity, which in the long term would increase the sustainability of the project. I think that with a committee as opposed to advocates, we would also be able to create stronger alliances and partnerships within the community, which would contribute to the sustainability of the project in the long term. Another aspect that I think the project could have been improved upon was that although we did plan to access the local government, we didn't put enough resources into addressing the stigma and challenging the stigma around dementia, which was something that was reported in a preliminary needs assessment of Northam. So I think that the limited time and resources that we'd allocated was not going to be sufficient to raise the amount of awareness that would be required to challenge the stigma, which is going to reduce the social inclusion of the people with dementia. I think that we could have worked with the media and worked with religious leaders in the community and cultural leaders in the community to raise more awareness about dementia before implementing a project like this. The last thing I would have done differently in this project, which I think we didn't do at all, was account for the risks of the project. So the expected risks, such as a resistance to change within the community, could have resulted in community disengagement, and our project relied heavily upon the community wanting to be involved. Another risk that we didn't address was key man dependency. So with our community advocates, if we found one really strong personality that really was driving the project and then something happened to them and they couldn't be a part of it anymore, that could really alter the entire process of our project. So I think if we had used the Dementia Friendly Community Committee idea instead, that risk would have been virtually eliminated, as the committee would still be able to continue even if this one person had dropped out. Alternately, the unexpected risks, although you can't exactly account for them, you can seek outside advice to get a different mindset and create contingency plans and slack in the time frame based upon that, which we didn't do. So although we did identify mentors from outside the community, we didn't assess who we actually needed to talk to get that alternate perspective, and we didn't allow any slack in the program for it. Thinking about some of the strengths and limitations that might impact upon the implementation of this project, I think something that I do quite well is being able to turn limitations into advantages. And I think through various life experiences and circumstances and limitations that I've had, it's forced me to work harder and adopt strategies to overcome them, and all in all be more self-reliant, which I think in relation to the planning and implementation of this project, I think a project is always going to have limitations, that time, budget, resources, staff. I think without being able to optimize these limitations and without being able to turn them into advantages, a project just couldn't work. So I think that's something I do quite well. Something that I know I need to work on, and it's a byproduct of the same life experiences and circumstances, which I now consider to be advantages, is they've resulted in a fierce sense of independence in me and a tendency to not want to show weakness and to an interpersonal battle every time it comes to asking for help. So when I'm running a project like Dementia Friendly Northam, if I'm not smart enough to ask the dumb questions because I feel as though I should already know the answer, it's only going to put pressure on myself and it's going to alienate the rest of my team. And if we can't work well as a team, and if the leader is alienating the rest of the team, it's going to have negative impacts on the project. Another element that I think is a strength for me, which comes quite naturally to me, is I think I have quite high levels of empathy and also helpfulness when it comes to working in a team. And Margaret Heffernan talks about how teams that have higher levels of empathy and higher levels of helpfulness tend to be more productive and more successful and just work better together. However, I think much of the time I cross the line from being empathetic and helpful to being a people pleaser, which means that I take on too many responsibilities. I don't always recognize when someone is asking something of me that is unreasonable, and I tend to say yes without fully considering the implications of that. I think that this is going to be, if I'm not aware of it and I remediate it, it's going to be damaging when it comes to running a project, because it means that I tend to avoid conflict. And running this project is all about who gets what and making it work, and conflict is always going to arise out of that. Without being able to resolve those conflicts, the alliances that we formed with different members of the community, with advocates or with the local government, will break down and the project won't be able to move forward. So I think it's really important that I learn how to negotiate and confront these conflicts before they turn into a problem. So when I think about ways that I can increase the impact of my strengths and reduce the impact of my limitations and improve on my limitations, I think that one method that works for both is to maintain awareness and build on my awareness through reflection, reflecting on situations in the moment as well as afterwards through journaling. I think that doing this will allow me to further understand my motivations and my initial reactions to situations. Like if I'm in a situation where there's a conflict arising and my initial reaction is to retract, understanding that and being able to make decisions that aren't just based on my first initial reaction, as well as in a situation where I'm needing to ask for help. I think relating to the situation where I need to ask for help, in a team situation, engaging in trust building and team building exercises to increase social engagement will help to increase the productivity of the team as well as just practicing asking for help, having some go-to phrases that I can use for when I get stuck or when I can't find words to improve my articulation of the question that I'm trying to ask. For conflict management, I think that attending workshops or getting a mentor and learning from other leaders I see around me every day at uni, at work, at home, actively looking for the good things, the bad things, and then trying to improve my negotiation skills and de-escalation skills when the conflict arises, rather than entertaining my initial reaction, which is to shy away from those situations.